Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Weppett, and I am here to help you unleash your apex potential. And today we are back with this second episode of what I am calling my psychomagnetic self-talk series. The idea is that your consciousness is like a magnet. And if we learn how to use self-talk properly, we can control what you are emotionally attracted to or repelled by. And if we can control that, then we can ultimately control what sorts of results you attract or repel. Because if we can control your emotions, then we can control your actions pretty easily. And it's those actions that determines what sort of success you attract in your life, right? You can think of it like The Secret, but only it's not a secret. It's actually just a skill that can be understood and mastered. And today what we're going to be looking at is the foundational skill for mastering all of that stuff. And so I hope you get a lot out of it. All right, my friends, earlier this week, I kicked off something I was calling the Self-Talk Toolbox series. But after I was thinking about it a little while, I was like, I don't really like that name. It just doesn't got some pop to it. Doesn't have enough zing. And also, I already had a thing called psychomagnetic theory. It's my theory more or less on how to program your brain, how to program yourself for success, utilizing all the magnetic aspects I said in the intro. And so, you know what? I just decided to change it. So sorry if that's confusing, but we're calling it the psychomagnetic self-talk series. And this episode, we're going to be really getting into the foundational stuff. Like last week, we got you just talking to yourself, talking about translation and response, right? Translate your emotions and you respond to them as a leader and a friend. Now we're going to start getting into exactly how to respond to yourself so that you can start getting practical results in your life. Now, before I go any further, I want to recommend that you check the link below in my free guide section and get my metascript method guide. It's a completely free guide. And if you practice what you find in there, then it'll really kind of help you measure your progress and focus your progress, utilizing a very powerful journaling technique that I've developed that has changed a ton of people's lives. So, check that out before we get going. But, I'll wait for you and do it. All right. So the topic of today's video really is about emotional polarity. The idea is that, whenever you have an emotion, you either have a positive or negative or kind of neutral response to something. That's your emotional polarity, right? And what we really want to get to is a state where good things feel good and bad things feel bad. Imagine how easy it would be to live well if that was the case, right? But the problem is a lot of times our polarity gets all kinds of crossed up, right? Bad things feel good or good things feel bad, right? So, it'd be a case of craving something that's not good for you or, feeling resistance toward doing something that is good for you, right? Our emotions are kind of the root of a lot of our personal limitations. And until we know how to shift our emotional polarity, then we're kind of a victim to our emotions. If you don't know how to shift your emotions, then your only option is to either repress them or to just give in to them, right? And repression, that causes a lot of problems, usually causes some kinds of uncontrolled outbursts and stuff like that. And we want to avoid that. We also want to avoid just having to give in to our emotions. We want to be able to live as we want to live, according to our higher morals, values, desires, and all that kind of stuff, right? So in order to do that, we need to learn how to shift our emotional polarity. The most important thing you need to understand about your emotional polarity is that there is always a narrative underneath it. You can think of it as the narrative is the underlying thought process. It's like the configuration of the circuit. And then the emotional charge that results from that circuit, that's the actual emotion you feel, the thing that creates the polarity. So it's like if we want to change the way we feel, we have to find the underlying narrative and shift it. And we do this through self-talk, right? We talked about this last week. It's like find the find the narrative under the emotion. So for example, let's say you are trying to do a diet that's, no junk food, okay? And you have a craving to eat a cookie, okay? Well, that's not very helpful, right? That could get in the way. You either have to repress that or give in to that, or we want to be able to shift it, right? So in order to shift it, we got to first understand what is the narrative as it stands. Well, when we're talking about emotional polarity, you want to look for what are we defining as good, i.e. the positive charge, or what are we defining as bad, i.e. the negative charge. Okay. And so you just want to look at that feeling and attach some words to it that define, like, what's that feeling defining as good, what it's defining as bad. So in the case of craving a cookie, it's saying, eating a cookie is good, positive charge, because it would taste good. That's the narrative. It doesn't need to be fully rational. That's the thing, is especially when our emotions are unconscious, they don't need to be rational because our emotional mind isn't rational. It doesn't have the machinery to rationally evaluate what it thinks. This is why we can hold completely irrational and contradictory feelings, right? And so if we want to fix them, we have to bring them into the realm of rationality, and then we can start shifting them. So that's why we got to put them into words, because those words, as we said, those are like the containers that allow us to start rearranging that internal circuitry. So you find that faulty internal narrative. What next? Well, this is the fundamental work of psychomagnetic self-talk, is you need to find a new narrative that allows you to shift that emotional polarity. And so here's the question, is like, what story could you tell about the cookie that changes the way you feel about it? That's it. And if you speak this thought into your emotionality, if you speak it to yourself as a leader and a friend, and you find the right narrative, then guess what? You're going to be able to shift your emotions enough to be able to act on the new narrative, right? And if we get really good at it, we can actually get to the point where you completely throw away the old narrative and you embrace the new one, right? And so examples of this might be, okay, well, if you eat this cookie, then you're not going to be able to succeed in your diet. Okay, maybe that would work for you. Maybe you have to say something like, you know what? Actually, I think we want to have something a little bit healthier. Maybe it'll still taste good. We'll find something that's good. And, if we eat good for the next couple of days, then maybe we're going to have something sweeter then. We'll treat ourselves to a cheat day on Sunday. Okay, maybe that would work. Maybe you need to remind yourself why you're doing this diet. Maybe you need to remind yourself that, your ex dumped you and, you want to get in really good shape because, you're going to see her at this work function in a couple of months. And so you want to make sure you're looking real good then, or something like that. We're going to get into the mechanics of all about how to construct the most powerful narratives, right? Because this is a rather complex thing, but the fundamental thing that you got to be doing is knowing what the game is. And the game is find a better narrative, all right? And what I want you to be doing between now and the next, session we have here, the next episode we have, is I want you to be trying to use this technique as much as you can. And in particular, I want you to find some place in your life where your emotions are getting in the way of your success. So maybe it's a place where you're craving something bad, okay, or maybe it's a place where you're feeling resistance or, feeling repulsion towards something good, right? So it could be something like the cookie where, it's like maybe you want to watch porn, or you want to play too much video games, or, you just want to eat junk food, whatever it is, you could focus your efforts there. Or maybe you have work that you got to do. Maybe you got a project you're trying to work on. Maybe you're trying to get yourself to get out there and date, but you got all this negative emotion that's holding you back. And so in that case, the question would be like, all right, well, what do we need to tell ourselves that make us want to do this thing, that make us want to do this thing that we are previously feeling adverse to, okay? And just try it. Try and see what you can come up with, because you need to practice stepping into this realm of self-talk where you're discovering, right? That's why this is self-talk. It's not affirmation work where you're just saying some rote thing to yourself. It's about having a conversation with yourself between your rational and emotional mind. And when you get these two parts talking, there is a discovery process, a creative process that occurs. And this is essential because we don't always know exactly what the right narrative is. So there needs to be some process of discovery, and that process that we're using is self-talk. So if we can get good at this part, this foundational piece here, this opens the door to everything else that we're going to be covering in this series, because there's a lot to it. This goes pretty deep and it gets pretty damn powerful. You have no idea. You might be thinking, oh, I read a book on mindset 5 years ago, and I get it. It's simple. It's kindergarten stuff. And it's nope, no, it is not. Everyone's got limiters on. That's what I see in this world, and that's why I'm making this series, is because people have no idea how much power they really have if they get this stuff down. And that's what I want to do, is I want to help you guys tap into the power that you have innately by teaching you how to control your mind, control your psychomagnet, as it were, that's really responsible for the success you get in life. So please, let me know in the comments below where you're going to be focusing, right? And I want you to actually find your limits. I want you to find the point where you can't reframe anymore. You can't find a better way of looking at things that shifts your emotions. Because once you start getting stuck, I don't want you to get frustrated. I want you to get curious, because I can guarantee you there's a way to get past that stuck point. But I need you to get familiar with the limits of where you're currently at. Okay, you got to start playing around if you really want to get the most out of this series. And I think if you follow along, especially if you're following along and you're doing journaling, like the metascript method, as I said, if you really want to take it up a level, then you're going to check out my vanguards, because then you can, compare notes with other guys who are on the same journey. But if you guys do this, like, you're going to transform your life. So hopefully you're excited about this, and hopefully, you can find some good stuff, and hopefully you can find the point where you get stuck. Okay? Be observant. See what happens when you get stuck. What kind of stuff comes up? What is the emotional response? Right? Because if you can get clear on exactly why you're getting stuck, if you can translate that stuckness into words, well, you've kind of started going down the rabbit hole. And so, yeah, please let me know what you come up with. And otherwise, please please subscribe, share this video with some friends if you want them to join you in this journey here. I think that would be really great. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Ooyap.